Figure 4 Radio.
Lock it in.
Lock it in.
Lock it in. Lock it in.
Lock it in.
Figure 4 Radio.
Hello everyone, welcome to Figure 4 Radio. It's the Mastermind Ollie Spring. Today we are breaking a record, the guest from the furthest away. That's the worst way of putting it. I'm here with Josh Shooter.
It's basically a 26-hour plane ride if you really want to dumb it down and keep it simple for those tuning in.
There we go. So 26 hours on a plane and he came here just for us. Feel honoured, you marks.
You also have the option of stopping over at like Abu Dhabi or Dubai anyway. So one or the other, but you need to split up the flight.
I think we were Bangkok when I went years and years and years ago. But still, that's another story for another day. Hey man, how's it going?
Unbelievable, mate.
Cool. So you are over here in the UK. I'm trying to think. There's so much stuff I want to ask you. I kind of want to dig at. Let's start with how long have you been wrestling? Actually, let's start with that.
8 years.
Is that?
I kind of lied to get my way into wrestling.
How so? How so?
How so is a great open-ended question you use for podcasts, right? So how so? Because I was 14. I went to my local wrestling show. I thought it was a big deal, right? Because it's fucking wrestling. Yeah, I love wrestling. And then I was turning 15, and I get there early, and I'm bringing everything I've got saved up, $100. I'm like, hopefully I can get some good seats because this is the wrestling and everything else. Thinking it was like the Raw, the SmackDown, or like the video games that I just binge on constantly. And it turns into local wrestling where I'm seeing people rock up, and I was like, oh, well, that guy looks like a wrestler. Now, these guys are carrying bags also, but they might be his friends. They don't look like wrestlers. Oh, this guy's definitely a wrestler. And I'm watching them load the ring up, I'm watching wrestlers come, and I'm watching designated ring crew. And then the promoter's dad comes out and he says, hey kid, you want to help with the ring crew? I was like, yeah, sure. I don't know how to do it. That's easy. So I just ended up doing ring crew. And then all of a sudden there's an announcement. Thank you, everybody. If you're not part of the show, please leave now. Doors are open at 6:30. I was like, oh, thank you for letting me help with ring crew, Mr. Mike. And I went to shake his hand. He's like, hey, kid, if you want to hang around, help with the music, you know how to use a computer? Oh, yeah, sure. Back then I knew how to use like MSN and Vivo. And I was like bullshitting my way through. I was at work since day one, not even realizing it. And so it was Windows Media Player, turn it up, and then slowly drop it and fade it out.
Oh, you even did the fading?
Yeah.
Man, that's pro level shit. That is right there.
That's all it was.
Not just play pause.
I remember being such a disrespectful little shit without realizing. I was like, fuck yeah, I could like go backstage and get photos with wrestlers and everything else. And then I asked a guy, hey, can you take a photo? Yeah, sure, come over here, kid. I was like, no, can you take a photo of me and Mr. Crackerjack, please? And like got a wrestler take a photo of me and another wrestler backstage. I must have like got so much heat that day.
I know a few guys that have done that. A few guys. So I don't know. So 8 years. That's quite a good run so far, I'd say.
Yeah. It's just more constant progression. I'll just get bored and I'll do one thing and then I'll have a bucket list. Like, I've never wanted to get signed to the Fed, but it's just doing the next thing. And then originally I just wanted to have my first match. I was never really a die-hard wrestling fan. Yeah. I love the video games more so than anything else, like Day of Reckoning on GameCube and WrestleMania 17 on GameCube as well. They were amazing. But I wasn't a die-hard fan, and I just wanted to have my first match. Then I wanted to go interstate. Then I wanted to do a main event, although it means nothing. And then I wanted to have my own teacher.
No, but I think main events are it's a milestone.
It is, yeah. And so I wanted these milestones. I did Japan. I did every state there was in Australia. Did New Zealand. Got paid my own international flight to go to Singapore once. Little milestones along the way, and then I was like, what's a bigger milestone I could do? England. Loved it. And then I got like a visa to come over here, and so that's a milestone here, just to complete that without breaking down, anxiety, and going home to pat my own dog, right?
That's cool. I always like asking the question, how did you first discover wrestling? As in, like, one day you didn't have a clue it was a thing, and then the next day you were like, oh, so this is a thing. Obviously, I mean, for most people over here, it's a very similar story. You know, your parents have got Sky TV, and then you watch Raw, or you had another channel and you watch WCW. What's it like in Australia for kind of getting into wrestling? And
back then, you did have the options of like tape trading and then watching it on certain TV channels and everything else.
Okay,
but I watched it on a rotation of 4 DVDs I would get from Blockbuster at the time.
Okay.
And then I would play the video games, and a friend really got me into it, and that's about it. And then I seen the poster on in a fish and chip shop one day, and I was like, oh yeah,
Okay.
I'll go check it out.
So friends is always a good way of doing it. Are you still friends with the person that got you in?
Absolutely not.
No. Cool. So fish and chip shop. So you saw local stuff before you saw like the American and all that sort of stuff.
Oh no, I've seen American wrestling and everything else, like your WWE, the pay-per-view where Brock Lesnar F5's the Big Show onto a forklift and he comes back with it and everything else. Judgment Day something. That was like the pay-per-view that I would binge on because I had the most access to and everything else. And so then I'd just try and like search on the internet this, search that, and like I just slowly started to binge and just fall in love with it. And then I just seen my first local show and I was like, oh yeah, cool, I'll give it a go. And I was learning moves that I'd never seen before and I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. And then made sense when I actually watched it back because I'm a bit of a dickhead like that.
So yeah, you started off. What was the local show the first local show you went to?
So
do you remember?
First local show was called Alpha Pro Wrestling, a generic.
That's a pretty sick name.
Everyone's like ABC name, and everything else. Funny enough, it was in the Faulkner Community Center, and now there's a wrestling company. Not the greatest wrestling company in the world right now, but it's wrestling back at the Faulkner Community Center when I've left the country. So for like nostalgia reasons, I'd like to wrestle there.
Want to go back there and do it again.
But at the same time, it's kind of rotten.
Yeah. So let me think. So was that training schools in Australia? Because I'm trying to kind of grasp an entire.
You try and grasp what it is without actually knowing what it is.
Yeah, pretty much. Get a feel for like the entire Australian wrestling.
I came in when there was a stagnant period because there was a company called PWA, and that was Pro Wrestling Australia, and that slowly branched into PWA Adelaide, PWA Elite, which was in. So
it's kind of like the
Sydney.
NWA of.
It was very much the NWA, and that was all started by Lobo Henry, and it developed some of the greatest wrestlers Australia had, like Spike Steele, and some of the greatest wrestlers that are still around, like Dowie James and Mike Burr, which went on to become our trainer. And then I was in the stagnant period where PWA Melbourne died, which was the hottest company there was. PCW, which was another company, but they pretty much stay to themselves. They do their own thing. They closed up shop as well, so it was like no training schools. So it was the only thing, and luckily enough, it was only like half an hour for myself. So that was easy enough to get to. Cool. And then eventually got turned into the young boy offer deal where I'd clean the ring, clean the center, do the posters, do everything else, and I'd train for free. And so I was training for about 18 months until I had my first match. Then I come over here and people are doing it in the first 6 months. Yeah. And then they're running for it and they wonder why. But once again, you get better over experience.
Yeah. What was your first ever match that you had? Like, how well do you remember it?
All right, I remember it perfectly.
Okay, yeah, let's hear it.
And once again, me being a piece of shit and everything else, and I lied to get my way into wrestling, and then I lied when I had my debut match. So
what did you lie about?
Again, there, mate. It's a podcast.
Sorry,
it's a story.
Sorry,
right?
My bad.
So I got asked by this promoter that Raneem, right, for GZW Heatwave Tour because it was 44 degrees for like 2 weeks and everything else. It was just death. He's like, hey Josh, you want to wrestle? I was like, I have no wrestling gear. I've got board shorts and t-shirt. He's like, that's fine. Just chuck on a mask. So I ended up wrestling my best mate, Ryan Rowlands, which is now in AAA as Australian Suicide, and Harry Howlander or Alex Hayes, whatever he calls himself these days. And it was like the worst triple threat in the world, in the worst show, in front of 12 people. Someone got Irish whipped and they threw themselves onto a table. That table slid. They put their foot through a window, smashed a window of the community center. Like, everything was just going wrong. And then the next night, like, because it was a 2-day event, they booked me on the second day event. And then I wrestled the guy that I trained with, Alexi, and I walk out there, and this was my ring name at the time.
Okay, yeah.
Joshy Ramone. Because I had long black hair like a Ramone member, and I was skinny like a stick, and I looked like, what's his name? The guy with the braces at Sacrifice?
Jacob Daniels.
I looked like Jacob Daniels at the time, anyway. I was stick thick. I was a twig.
And it was this Josh E. Ramone or Joshy?
Joshy, Joshy.
Wow.
And I just wrestled in like, I came to the ring in like a Ramones band shirt, then took it off and had a singlet and jeans on, right? And the finish of the match was a frog splash, and I'd pretty much kneed the guy on the way down. But the worst part is, I was like walking out there, I was like, yeah, there's like 40 people there. This is my WrestleMania. And then as I walk out, Mike Burr, the guy that trained me, is sitting there, and he came down to watch some terrible wrestling, which I now respect, and I admire him for doing that, because I do the exact same thing whenever I get a night off. And I see him, and then he looks at me, and suddenly the music fades out, everything goes black, and I can only see his piercing eyes staring through my soul. And I go out there, and I'm just blanking up just because Mike's staring a hole through me. And then after, he's like, well, everyone knows at the training center about this, right? And the other trainer knew about this. And I was like, yeah, totally, right? He said it was cool. And then I get there, and he found out that it wasn't very cool whatsoever. And I got asked, and I did it. And I should have consulted, because they would have said, yeah, you know what, Josh? You're ambitious enough, fuck it, go for it and everything else. Or they would have said, no, but we respect you trying to go out there more. But instead I lied about it. And so for the principle of lying, they beat the shit out of me. I had a blood nose. I got stretched. I remember crying as well.
Wow.
But I'm all proud of it now. And Mike
you
Burr,
didn't quit? You came back?
Oh, yeah. There was another guy that quit because of it as well. But Mike Burr was like, oh, yeah, everyone gives him, like, the hard man reputation, but it's all kayfabe. It wasn't. Like, he beat the shit out of me.
Wow.
That being said, I was 15. Which I also got beaten the shit out of, because when I was 14 turning 15, my mum came to pick me up from training one day, and she said to the trainer, Mike, oh, you coming to Josh's birthday? He's having a laser tag centre. Oh, yeah? When's he turning 16? Oh, no, he's turning 15. Oh, yeah, okay. We'll see about that. Next week of training, beating the shit out of him. Squats, sprints, push-ups, crying, rinse and repeat.
That's crazy. So how long, was this 8 years ago then? Or was that even longer, sort of, because you were training before you had your...
7 years ago or whatever.
Wow. Because obviously you hear a lot of stories about, like, I want to say old school type guys who will, like, beat the crap out of people, like trainees and stuff.
George the Hitman Julio was a guy who is the missing link with Australian wrestling. So he was the guy when wrestling was off TV and everyone vanished, unless it was to make an appearance or to get a quick payday. George was still around to train people. George was still around to help people. But unfortunately, there was a few terrible people that was associated with his promotion. So no one would go down there and train with him. But George was the missing link between it all. And he started training people like Henry Lobo, that would eventually go into PWA. And then it would eventually branch on. So it all came down from George. And without George Julio, there wouldn't be wrestling or as strong in Australia right now.
That's cool. I mean, so you sent me a podcast to check out, because obviously I was kind of picking your brains about the Aussie scene and stuff.
Behind the Belt with Crackerjack.
Yeah, it was a really good listen. The one thing I kind of got from that is that the Aussie scene almost kind of mirrored the UK thing, because we had World of Sport, and then the TV execs decided to cut it in favour of putting other sports on. And it sounds like the same sort of thing happened down under, as it were.
One line killed it, because everything was coming up. Back then, you didn't have as many nightclubs and nightlife. You had the same tradition to do on a Sunday. And then it turned into wrestling was discussing a TV deal and everything else. And with Terry Packer, wrestling turned around and told them, we don't need you, you need us, and everything else. And that's what killed it with him. So wrestling then got taken off TV, and then they put the cricket on TV, cricket's fucking boring. They hit the ball, someone fetches the ball, they throw the ball, they hit the ball, someone fetches the ball, they run up, they run down, they run up, they run down. It's for me, I mean, I there's a lot more sports I'd watch cricket over, but yeah, I get that. And much like the UK kind of had a bit of a downtime, Australia had the same thing. When did it, or did you have any? Are you? Cause I'm about to ask you loads of questions. And do you like do you know anything about the history before you got into like wrestling in Australia? Quite a decent amount.
Okay, cool. So so obviously UK had a bit of a downtime. There was a few companies that were trying some things. I think maybe they got too big for their boots. And it was guys, I guess for us, so like the likes of Jody Fleisch and Johnny Storm, kind of started to bring the high flying stuff and really change it up from the old World of Sport type stuff. Was there kind of like a moment that the Australia scene started kind of picking back up again after
Jody Fleisch, Johnny Storm, Doug Williams, and all that is our Crackerjack, our Cremator, our Mad Dog, our Mike Bird, Dowie James. people like that. They were the older guys that are still around these days. That have,
obviously Crackerjack was on that podcast, so I kind of heard some good stories from him.
And Crackerjack has promo classes where he helps people and wrestlers find their motive, their values, their reasoning.
I think there needs to be more of that in the scene, if you ask me.
He is the greatest mind in wrestling. Top 3. Jimmy Havoc is like the smartest person that I ever know when it comes to wrestling.
Okay.
At the same time, like Jimmy Havoc's not a big guy, but look at the people he's beaten and all the imports he's faced.
I think he's one of the most over guys this country has. As far as if he walks into a room unannounced,
he has a presence.
100%. There's very few wrestlers that I'm genuinely kind of scared by. Because obviously I've seen him, post show and pre show and chat to most people. He's one of the few guys that I am like massively intimidated, whether the bell is rung or not. He's got that presence for sure. So I'm just trying to think. So with the UK scene, I think it was almost the emulation of the American scene that kind of got attention, and the fact that it kind of the traditional British style was very technical, very mat based.
We were more.
What was the Aussie scene?
We were more notorious for brawling and everything else. Obviously, our Hulk Hogan at the time was Mario Milano.
That's the name that came up a lot.
You guys had your Big Daddy V or whatever his name is.
Big Daddy. So what was it like when it came back? Was it the same that had to emulate the American style, or was there? Because in the podcast they spoke about kind of traditional Aussie wrestling has a very like set style. I don't think they actually specifically went into detail on what the Aussie style was, as it were. So
it was more brawling, if anything. That would be the closest way to describe it. Where England is more notorious for its technical side of things, and Japan try and elevate all suspension of disbelief. So then you poured into it more so. It's hard to describe, but like Carlo Conan was one of the first guys that left to venture elsewhere besides Daniel Beaumont, Jay Andrews and all that, and Carlo went to Lance Storms where he learned basic 7 principles from Lance, and he learned a lot more. He became a close friend with Lance for as far as I'm aware, and he started teaching classes at PCW before they closed down for a bit, and in between that period, that's when I got involved in wrestling. So I came back around the resurgence, or maybe just before, because it's really starting to pick up now. It hasn't
been that long. So I think the UK resurgence has been going on for a lot longer than I've kind of been into wrestling.
What, 5 years?
A lot longer than that. As in like back when Jody and Johnny were kind of tearing it up.
Okay.
I think maybe kind of 15, 20 actually for those guys. I might be blowing that out of proportion, but it seems a lot longer. But then if you kind of got back in when the Aussie kind of revival was happening, that seems a lot more recent, I guess. So I guess it's still starting to kind of still on the rise, as it were.
Yeah, it's booming now. They've just had Ricardo on their main event, which says a lot. They're working with New Japan more often. They had Trent Seven come over their show before that. Will Ospreay's trying to move. Jimmy Havoc's been down. Marty Skrull's been down. And these are just all important names, but at the end of the day, people like Dowie James, JXT to a degree even, Mike Burr, Crackerjack, Slex, Alan Payne, which has one of the greatest wrestling promos and characters that I've ever seen. They're all holding their own, and it's not like those people that are like, oh yeah, I was on a show with ABC, former WWE star. These guys are holding their own, and they're on the same level and caliber, and they're delivering, and it's return fans, and return business is the greatest type of business.
Cool. So let's get back to you. We'll have a little chat about the Aussie scene. That's all well. Actually, whereabouts are you from?
Melbourne.
Melbourne. Okay, cool. I spent a day and a half in Melbourne, I think. Saw my first and only game of Aussie rules football there.
Yeah. So,
which was bizarre to say the least.
On the topic of like wrestling in the country and everything else, Melbourne has MCW, Melbourne City Wrestling, which is my home promotion, Battle Championship Wrestling, New Age Wrestling, and a few others like that. But MCW is your main go-to. In Adelaide, you've got Right City Wrestling and Rampage, and they're your main places. And people like Jonah Rock, the MCW champion, and he recently debuted at PWG as well in the States.
Cool.
He comes from Rampage. You've got people like Damian Slater that competed in the WWE Cruiserweight Classic.
Yeah.
He's the trainer down at EPW, as well as David Storm and other notable figures there. But Damien Slater was also a part of Rampage Wrestling. You've got AWA in Queensland. You've got Newcastle Pro in Newcastle, just above Sydney. You've got PWA in Sydney. Like, these are really strong core places that are coming up and coming together. And there's more attitudes that are working together and greater attitudes. And attitudes you can't teach. You can teach a wrestler, you can't teach good attitude.
Very true. So it sounds like, I guess, it's a lot of territories, whereas over here you've got a lot of promotions that work a lot of the same towns. You have a lot of people, say, in London, a lot of people in the Midlands. Is it kind of still a kind of a territory sense over in Australia? And
okay,
because I guess you can't.
So over here, you
someone
can,
from Melbourne wouldn't just go, "Oh yeah, we're going to put on a little show in Sydney," and drive
absolutely not
hours up the coast.
Lucha Fantastica is the only company that's an exception because they'll put on shows around the country, but they're sold out shows no matter what because Lucha's easy to sell. If you want to go from Melbourne central and easy to be in, and I'm just blessed that I was from Melbourne because it's an 8-hour drive to Adelaide, or it's an 8-hour drive to Sydney. Where Sydney, if you want to go to Queensland, I think it's something like 12 to 18 hour, something like that.
It's a long way.
Yeah, it's a longer way and everything else, but then flights add up. But it can be tiring, and like the trip to the airport and the little things in between and the coffee on the way, like they all add up. So it's a lot harder to get around. Where over here, because it's a larger population to a smaller area ratio, it's a lot easier to have all these shows spread out.
Like 8 hours, you can drive pretty much anywhere.
Exactly.
And back again, probably.
Yep.
Which is crazy. And I think that's one thing that we take, not necessarily for granted, but I don't think we quite grasp just how vast the world can be in places. Like you say, it's an 8-hour drive over here. Whereas for us, I don't think anyone would ever consider an 8-hour drive just for a booking. And like, for example, anyone from down here making it up to Scotland would be almost unheard of. So is there a lot of guys that just stick to their own kind of territories, or is there?
You stick to your same companies. Like there's guys like Adam Brooks, which is phenomenal, and he'll be signed, guaranteed, in like the next 5 to 6 years. And like his best mate, Buddy Murphy, that was also known as Matt Silver, was his mentor and his best mate. So he'll be there sooner or later. But he's a regular for Riot City Wrestling in Adelaide, and he would often drive on the Friday night across, get there Saturday morning, wrestle Saturday night, and then leave Sunday morning, get back Sunday evening.
That is crazy.
And you do that every week.
People just wouldn't do that over here. I think that's a weird thing. And I'm not sure, again, I can't say that I definitely would, but it's something. I guess it's something to think about. And I guess, like you say, do you think is it a good thing? Do you find that the promotions over there are a lot stronger for the fact that there's they can kind of do their own thing and really control their own town, or have you found over here that the kind of the what's the word I'm looking for, concentration of these promotions everywhere is that which do you think works best?
What do you mean? Like, what are the pros and what are the cons?
Yeah. Yes. Let's go both. Yeah.
There's a lot more training schools, but then it's a lot easier for people to get into it. But that can happen anywhere. It feels like some of the main events can be repeated, and not necessarily a bad thing. It's like it guarantees people work, and someone like El Ligero that wrestles so often can have
6 shows a day, isn't he?
And he can have standout matches. He can often be in the main event everywhere else, but then that forces the con and the pro of the situation is it forces people to work a little harder, so then it forces the talent to get better by default, which if someone's got 6 to 9 hours of free wrestling on TV or free wrestling on the network without even going into the archives and without even having a Progress on Demand or an ICW on Demand account, they've got to really work harder to convince people to leave their home to watch their wrestling and everything else. So I believe that people are working harder to guarantee that, as well as the connection. The connection always makes people want to come back.
Which is a very good point. So let's have a look at your bucket list as well. So your first, you were talking about making it out of state. So what was your first kind of out of state kind of journey and thing like that?
So that was to Snake Pit Pro Wrestling.
Wow, I love these names, man. This is awesome.
Snake Pit Pro Wrestling Adelaide. It's changed names like 20 times since, I think. But Snake Pit, and then the guy that assisted with my training and everything else, he's like, no, don't worry, I'll get you in a match. And then looking back now, the match he got me in was a triple threat match with some other rookie.
You love them triple
himself
threats?
And me. I fucking hate triple threats. But anyway, and then the finish of the match was He had a guy up in the corner in a tree of woe, and then he told me to come in and give him come in and drop kick him. I came in, he gave me a big clothesline. I did a shooting star out of it because there was that much momentum behind the clothesline, and then he pinned me 1, 2, 3. So it's pretty much like, hey, don't worry, I got my own job, boy. Throw your boy in there, I'll make him look good. So it made no sense in the debut and everything else.
And how far was the journey for you as far as like?
It was like an hour flight.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't too bad, but it adds up.
But I bet it was kind of cool. So how long did you spend in Melbourne before you kind of made your way out of Melbourne as well?
I had the problem where I was stuck in the one promotion for a while, and then I was I'll be loyal with these guys. They'll take care of me. Like a few years and everything else.
Okay.
But then before
so it must have been pretty cool to kind of hop on that plane and be like, yeah, let's kind of spread your wings.
I didn't understand the term indie wrestler, right? Like, as an independent plumber and an independent contract, you work for many and multiple people.
Yeah.
So unless someone is giving me a contract where they're paying my bills, I should have been traveling around doing what I want to do because they're not paying me enough to come up with my choices for me.
So was the local people like? Was it frowned upon then? As in like you're moving around? Or?
No, some people are still in Adelaide. Some people stay loyal to where they're from and everything else. But as the place I was training finished up and everything else, I need to start taking care of number one more often.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So that was your first out of state. You mentioned Japan, Singapore. You're obviously over here. Which was your first kind of like other country you went to?
Japan. Oh wait, no. Backtrack that a bit. I went to USA, Texas briefly.
Okay.
And so I went there more of a holiday with mates and everything else. We got free tickets to go watch Unforgiven, which was super cool. I think it was Unforgiven. It was the match where Mark Henry and Big Show wrestled and they did the superplex and the ring broke.
Okay, yeah.
And we got freebies because we were training with Booker T and we're like, we're thinking about checking this out. He's like, don't worry, I'll put these tickets under my name. And then I felt like such a strobe going to the box office being like, hey, did Booker T leave us some tickets?
Is that actually what you said?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it worked out to be true. They're like, yes.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Wow, what are the odds some other mark could have came up and said that?
But that was more of a holiday rather than someone reached out and was like, dude, can you fly to this country and wrestle?
We did some training and everything else over there. I got to wrestle on Booker T's show, which is Reality of Wrestling.
Yeah.
I had a few tryout matches with other local companies out there before the show started. It was a bit of an experience. I've seen how America worked, but it's so spread out. Like, it's a bigger version of Australia in that sense, but there's just a bigger ratio of bad wrestling to good wrestling at the same time.
Okay.
And I remember taking a hip toss in the ring for Funaki's company, Branded Outlaw Wrestling, that's it.
Okay.
And the ring was so stiff, and I tried to impress him so much. I jumped so high. Never jumped so high in my life. I came down, and I landed so hard, I shat myself. Like, I thought that happened.
No.
And I went to the bathroom, grabbed some toilet paper, I was like, whew, false alert, all good, and everything else. And then later that show, as someone else had a tryout match, it was two larger-than-life fellows. I'm being generous. I don't know why I'm being generous. They were really fat.
Yeah.
And they got...
super heavyweight.
Super heavyweight.
Super heavyweight.
Super heavyweight. And then they got told 5 minutes, just show us what you got and everything else. So they went 15. Now, this show had a bunch of independent names. Paul Burchill, which I didn't know was Paul Burchill at the time. I was like, hey, man, you been wrestling long? He's like, yeah. I was like, oh, who for? WWE? I was like, oh, you're Paul Burchill.
Yeah.
Straub Josh. It had Booker T. It had Boogeyman that rocked up in his makeup and kept complete kayfabe. It had Brian Kendrick. Who else was it? Jack Stain, which is now in TNA. They were all on the show anyway, and so they're all sitting around watching this guy, and they were just like laughing halfway through because these guys have gone 15 minutes. They did a crossbody, back roll through, held the tights, ref's gone down, 1, 2, and as it's gone down for the 3 count, they've let go, and the guy that was pinning him and holding the tights slid. And slid's like a bit of a loose term here, so they slid under the bottom rope. And he had his hand raised, and he was like, yeah, working the imaginary crowd that there was, and nothing happened and everything else, and the refs pointed to him, hey, you, back in the ring, that was a 2 count. And so he pops back into the ring, and then he sends to the corner, and then like an awkward cuddle, and then it pauses, and then he jumps up for a crossbody. I was like, no way, he's not going to, is he? catches the crossbody, back roll through, holds the tights, 1, 2, 3, slides out, same thing. And I'm like, wow. And so at least they watched our whole match. That's the main thing I got from that.
So Japan, so for guys over here, Japan is like a lot of guys. It's almost like the holy grail. It's like that's the place to get to.
Just fuck off and do it. Like, get out your comfort zone. Like I got.
Is it easier for you guys to? Because obviously it's a lot closer to fly from Australia to Japan.
It's cheaper flight wise and everything else. If that's what you mean.
So is there a lot of Australian guys that make it to Japan? Because I struggle to name.
Yes and no.
There's obviously the obvious ones that have made it over there, but I don't think I've ever actually met anyone. You could be the first guy that's ever wrestled in Japan that I've ever met. And obviously you hear about the handful of people like your Ospreys and your Mighty Girls. There's not an awful lot. Has there been more Australians that make it over in Japan?
Yeah, more have gone over on tour. AJ Istria recently came off a Noah tour. TMDK, which is now known as TM61.
What's your thoughts on that name, just quickly? TM61.
Well, you know why the 61, right?
Yeah, area code.
Yeah, it's area code.
Is that because I kind of like the sound of TMDK, whereas that kind of just got a little bit. I don't know.
TM61 is at least like putting out the emphasis on the Australian angle.
That's true. That's true.
I don't know pros and cons of everything, but they're all amazing guys.
So Japan.
So first time round, I just messaged the web advisor, the web translator for Big Japan Pro Wrestling, and he put me in contact with the right people. I went across for a month, did a bunch of shows, and I did the young boy duty, kneeling by the ring, watching the wrestling happen, getting on the big bus, traveling around, living in the dojo, cooking, cleaning. And when I say cleaning for Big Japan, you like just sweep a lot of glass off canvases and stuff like that. I have the job of like assembling the glass tube towers, which is just using rubber bands around the ring, stuff like that. And that was fun. That was an experience. But it was also lonely because you're in a country surrounded by so many people, but yet no one speaks the language. You're just like, fuck. So
that must have been a bit of a culture shock, right?
It is, but at the same time, social media saves me in that sense, where it can be like a blessing and curse at the same time. Second time round, I went over and I just pretty much winged it. And I was like, I'll go for a bit of a holiday. I've got next to nothing left, saving-wise. I stayed in a hostel. And then I went down to 01 and I did a bit of training. And they're like, hey, what are you doing for the next few weeks? I was like, nothing. You want to come on tour? Yeah, sure. So I went on tour. And then Demi Bennett, also known as Rhea Riley, we hanged out. And then she was on the show because she was over for Stardom at the same time. So we went down to Ribera. We did shows, and I just winged it. Like, it's just rocking up. I trained at the dojo. They were like, hey, you're not completely shit, and you're not a straw. And then I got put on a few shows, so I got that under my belt now.
Cool.
Sweet, rad. Yeah, I'm just going across for a holiday soon, but that's about it.
It's just
not going to wrestle this time.
That's pretty cool.
And then Singapore worked out through Lucha Fantastico.
Okay. So Singapore's not a country I've ever heard anybody wrestle in. So
I've wrestled in the world's largest pop-up shop for a watch company called Hublot, and the cheapest watch there was 50,000 American dollars. But at the same time, Johnny Yen, what's the guy's name? He was in Star Wars, The Force is with me.
I can't say I know it.
Johnny Yen?
Is it?
Donnie Yen, that's it.
Okay.
D-O-N-N-I-E, Donnie Yen. He was there, so I picked him up on my shoulders as I'm topless in a luchador mask, sweating bullets in humid Singapore anyway. And they're pouring us wine and whiskey, and like they're just giving us bottles of Glenfiddich, and they have desserts with gold flakes in them, and there's catering, and the catering and taking them to the back, and it's like all these posh people that don't want them. Now you've seen me at the pub tonight, but at the same time there's dessert with gold fucking flakes, and I'm in the back just like smashing these down, just like constantly, like they're gold, it tastes like absolute shit, but imagine how much my poo would be worth now. Like I'm just smashing these through.
Wow.
And so I went across with me, Mikey J, and that's when me and Mikey J really like bonded, we became homies and everything else. Now I've got the utmost respect and all the time in the world for Mr. MJ, and he's going to come to Japan. We're going to hang out there. Myself, Tommy Hellfire, Robbie Eagles, Carlo Cannon, and I'm going to get heat if I don't remember. No, that's about it, I think. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, sweet. And there was like a fire-breathing girl and like a belly dancer and a few suicide girls. That was it. But yeah.
Singapore, to be fair, I think if you'd have told me that story, I think I'd have guessed it had to have been somewhere like Singapore, because that sounds... Was it as nuts as it sounds?
We made it nuts because we went out to a club after. between picking up and then like ditching some people, and they're like, bro, I lost you guys, I couldn't get back. I was like, yeah, whatever, we just ditched you because you're like no fun. Getting blind and eating as much, and like when we got there we couldn't figure out how to order takeaway or everything else, so I got Uber Eats, and then we ended up getting Popeye's chicken for the first time, and so we got Popeye's chicken delivered to our hotel, so we ate it in a hotel swimming pool that was heated and everything else.
Nice.
In humid Singapore, and life's been downhill since since nothing will ever top that moment.
So your time over here in the UK. So actually, the first international guy I ever called a match for was yourself. I want to say 2014.
Fuck.
I think it was maybe my second or third show as a commentator, which makes it the third or fourth indie show I'd ever been to.
What was the match?
It was you and Steve Ace Andrews, if I remember rightly.
Me and who?
Steve Ace Andrews.
I remember that because Ace Andrews, Jay Andrews reminded me of Jay Andrews, part of Hardway Inc. at the time, Mike Burr's tag partner for years, and so that's why that name sticks out. The thing that like shook me up the most is like I went down there, I did the match, then at the end of the show he's like, oh, let's get a photo. I was like, oh yeah, cool, I don't mind like a photo with someone I wrestled from time to time. And then the photographer of the show still uploaded the photo of us in the gallery, so in like match 3 you can see us wrestle, then at the end after the main event there's just a photo of us shaking hands, and it completely makes us look like straws.
Was the photographer Lee from Sacrifice?
Gut feeling, yes.
Yeah, because that was where I first met him.
This time round, I was like, hey Lee, I'm coming over, see you doing a bit of a thing, and Lee's taken care of me ever since, so that's why I've got all the time in the world for the Sacrifice guys. Plus it's all about the quality banter at the end of the day.
Hell yeah. So 2014 ish, was that how many times had you been over? Was that your first, or was that?
Yeah, first time.
Cool. So how so literally it was the case that you were like, where's the next place I can go? You were like, fuck it, let's go to England.
Yeah, Tony came over. I seen how smooth she was from training with the All Star and Dean Allmark, and then I knew it was a bit of a hot spot. It was rising, and then I just took my time in between getting the visa and not coming back. I came across a second time because Dan at IPW helped me out. He's told me if I come across, he can get me solid 8 bookings, and like he'll make one of them worth my while, which I ended up wrestling Master Ciampa while he was still doing the indies at the time. So that was kind of cool there. Had a few decent matches, but it was just networking, and it all paid off because this time around I'm working constantly between Wrestling League, WrestleForce, Sacrifice Pro. I'm in talks with 4FW and Southside, so hopefully they come through.
Cool.
Got a few more things in the works. I'm just trying to stay as busy as I can. World War Wrestling as well with Brett Meadows.
Good old
Brett's
Brett.
been lovely to me as well. He helped me out.
He was very complimentary of your match you had last night in WrestleForce, I think it was.
We beat the absolute shit out of
That's
each other.
exactly what he said.
But, same time, the biggest upset is I've had matches now at WrestleForce with Cassius, Paul Robertson and Brett. They've all loved it. They all said that it's some of their most more favourite notable matches of late.
Yeah.
But it's not fucking filmed.
So it's good job.
If a tree falls in the forest, blah blah blah.
If no one's around, if you have a 5-star match and it isn't put online, did it ever happen?
If you have a 5-star match, if it isn't in Tokyo Dome,
that's
it's
true.
a 5-star match.
That's true. So actually, I want to ask you. So I've seen you quite a lot actually recently.
Apologies.
It's fine. I'll go over it. So one thing I've noticed is you're having a lot of fun in the ring.
Yeah.
And I've noticed I think a lot of guys are out there maybe trying to like impress people or prove points. One thing I've noticed with you is you are just having a fucking blast out there, man. Like, are you kind of at a point now where you're kind of, I guess, happy in yourself and as a performer, and you are now having fun? Because I can't remember the last time I saw anyone have quite as much fun as you having in the ring.
I can get quite depressed at times, but at the same time, I've moved to another country, relocated myself. I'm outside my comfort zone. I've got no expectations. I've got nothing to lose. I've got nothing, and I've got everything to gain at the same time. Like, wrestling is the only thing I've really got. So I'm just doing my thing, and if I'm having fun, everyone's going to have fun at the same time.
Amen.
It's not just like kayfabe sense like that. Like, I'm going out there, I'm doing my thing. It's the art form behind it. It's the structure behind it. It's the creative side of things. It's the facials. Side note, Adam Brooks, greatest facials in professional wrestling anyway, but it's that which is enjoyable and everything else. Like, I suck with my character, but at the same time, I'd like to think I have enough of a persona and presence to compensate for that.
I'm trying to think, is how much of the Wrestling League Rumble can I mention on a podcast? You pulled a guy's pants down. unbeknownst to him as you were leaving. That was, I think you were saying, yeah, the commentary went really quiet, and that's because I was literally crying with laughter.
That was just on the fly, because
Yeah,
I
you
was walking
just
out, I was like,
thought-
fuck it, I'm just trying to get as many as eyes on me. If you've seen, there was like 6 false attempts. So there was the reverse 619,
Yep.
which is, they're throwing me out, legs go out, I'm holding onto the ropes like a spider web.
Wait, was it you
Come back
hanging
in.
upside down and like swearing it? But yeah, you were just there by your feet, like, yeah, I'm still not going anywhere, flashing the fingers.
There's a skin the cat, there's like a fake Banderas, there's like 6 different fake reversals. So when people try and throw me out, I know a different way every time.
Yeah.
Until it all came down, and what's his name? Has a happy place and everything else.
Oh, Ash Draven. Draven, yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Draven.
Big fan of his.
Yeah, he
Big
threw
fan
me
of
out
his.
and everything else around 3:30 mark. Not 3:30 mark, into the match. 3:30 mark in the afternoon.
Yeah. You had a good run of it, and I said today you were in 5-on-5, and again I noticed you were having a bit of bants with some of the crowd and some of the guys. It's good to see, man. It's really good to see because
I did like a dive as well. Like me,
Yeah.
I did a dive. What the actual
is that not something you normally do?
No, absolutely not. Room for error. Like, that's when shit goes wrong.
It is, yeah, that's fair. So how long are you over here for now, man? How, like,
May 2019, unless I find a wife.
wow, that's quite a long. That's quite a while.
18 more months.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
So I've done a decent amount in like the last 6 months anyway.
Fuck it, let's like fucking spitball and brainstorm. So you've obviously mentioned where you've been. Is there anywhere you haven't been and you really want to kind of get the word out that I want to go wrestle for this company or wrestle this guy or?
Doug Williams, but I'm wrestling for Premier Wrestling, so I'm hoping that happens because
Nice.
Doug has got a few years left, so he said. What is there? There's ICW, which is huge on the list. There's Germany for WXW, which I want to do. I'm really happy with the wrestling league and like the unity there. Like I fucking love the unity. Unity is the one thing for any team to succeed, and that's something I learned strongly from Riot City Wrestling, with people like Grim leading the charge and everything down there. But in between my time gone from Australia, like they've had Okada, they've had Trent Seven, they're constantly selling out and turning people away at their shows. They can't find bigger venues besides the venues where concerts are held at that hold 100 to 50,000 people. What else has happened? They've had international assault tours. Now they're doing 4 to 5 international assault tours next year. Like wrestling's on the rise down there. They've had Scott Steiner even come down for another promotion, not MCW. Promos are crisper, video editing quality as well. Like it's all coming up in between my time gone. So when I come back, I just can't wait because I'm going to come back in that sweet spot where England is a few years ago when it just starts to elaborate. Where else is there? There's ICW. I'd like to do a few progress matches. That'd be cool anyway. Like, it's not the same progress, guys. Like, Nathan Cruz is incredible with what he does. And, like, he doesn't wrestle frequent at progress. I'd like to have him around with Jimmy at some point anyway. Jimmy Havoc. Just because I can, like... I could take a punch or two, I'd like to believe.
Okay.
And Jimmy would love to leave.
He likes to give it for you.
They've got Thursday night shows like Anarchy Pro, which seem really fun. The closest equivalent we've ever had was a place called Wrestle Rock, which do a combination of a band and a wrestling show.
That sounds fucking awesome to me.
4 matches and everything else. Like they've even had Julian James on there, which is a part of. I'm gonna get heat if I don't remember his name, which I will have to remember his name. The Shine. You ever heard of a band called The Shine?
I'm gonna go no.
It's like a rock band of the 90s, but he was like one of the lead singers of that.
Oh, okay, that's cool. That's cool.
Kiss Troyer, the Kiss tribute band, they played it like Wrestle Rock. So it was an actual set-up event and everything else in like a notable hi-fi bar in the city. So that was really cool. But the basic list of like going up to ICW, so I'll venture up to Scotland at some point, train with them, and hopefully get my way onto an ICW show, especially at the Hydro, which they're wrestling at tonight when we're recording this.
Yeah, absolutely insane.
Progress, whether it's at the big one or the small one, whatever the fuck it is. I just want to do a chapter show at some point. That's about it. I'm pretty simple. I'm just trying to stay as busy as I can.
Yeah, for sure, man. One kind of the last thing I want to kind of delve into. There has definitely been an increase in Aussies and Kiwi wrestlers. I guess on just in the spotlight. I mean, obviously yourself included over here. You've got. I'm going to get the names wrong, but there's kind of an influx of guys coming over from Australia. I saw Ashton have a really cool match with. It's called, I think, the Aussie Arrow. I'm gonna forget his name, which is really bad. Kyle. Somebody tell me who his name is. You must know the guy, right? You know, you're Australian. You know everyone in Australia.
Thanks, mate.
What's it? Carl Ashmore?
Carl Ashmore has a beard.
No. Oh no, he was also. It was. Do you know who I'm talking about? The Aussie Arrow. Mm-hmm. You're just letting me stew.
Yep.
Yeah, you bastard. So him and there was another guy. The Aussie Open have come over. You're over here as well. You look at the WWE. We mentioned TM61 and Rhea O'Reilly, Tony Storm, Buddy Murphy. There's kind of an increase of Aussies. So it's almost like. I mean, there's been like a rise of Brits over there as well, and it seems like recently there's a lot more Aussie people kind of taking front and center.
Let me interrupt the middle of your sentence with the start of my sentence for a second.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that we're on one big fucking island.
Yep.
And it's very remote, which is great if there's ever a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's hard to get eyes on us. And with the smaller population to area ratio, there's not as many towns, not as many holiday camps, so we can't do as many shows as you guys can. But we work harder, we analyse more, we're looking at feedback, and people are hungrier, I feel. And so because of that, we're improving and we're finally getting noticed, we're finally getting seen. People are going overseas, they're learning, they're coming back and they're showing. They're not just learning and keeping to themselves to be big fish, little pond. The pond is growing itself. The fish are growing. And then it's not even fish anymore, it's sharks. It's shark eat shark, and we're hungry now.
And it must be pretty cool to see as an Aussie guy, like, it's almost like a sense of pride, like Australian wrestling getting this kind of recognition.
I'll put it into gym terms, right? So you can have someone that goes to the gym, they can grab a squat rack, they can go to the squat rack and they can lift some weight up and down. But if you load it up and you tell the guy, okay, if you have that guy that's doing the up and down reps and everything else, he knows he's got 3 sets of 10, he's going to ease through. He's not going to push himself. He's got 3 sets of 10. He's like, oh, cool, this is what I need to do, this is the job and everything else. For Australia, it's the job of going there and you have to do it. In gym terms, it's that guy knowing he has that one set and he has to get into that mindset where if he doesn't push that weight up once he gets down, his family's there's a bullet against his family's head and everything else. He has to do it. He's fighting for something. He's got a motive. It feels like every Australian's motive right now is to help the scene and the industry in Australia come up as a whole. And people like Chris Fresh, Jay Andrews, Mikey J are guaranteeing and ensuring that.
That is awesome. So it's like I guess everyone's banding together.
United through common cause.
You've got a lot of people, like a lot of promoters stabbing each other in the back, and it's a lot. There's a lot
happens
of this
everywhere. Like they're super dodgy promoters.
Yeah, but it sounds like, as I say, the scene on a whole are really kind of. They're all in it together, I guess. And is that maybe born from the fact that there's there's not like 20 different promoters in the same kind of 50-mile area?
The promotions are real close together. Like you can still drive 10 to 15 minutes sometimes.
Okay.
But there's less shit promoters. There's less shit cunts about it all. So you'll get the shit wrestlers that would just die off. They'll start their own promotion, then that would just die over time, and they'll just vanish into the wind and everything else. I've had more cancellations over here, whether it's a driver or whether it's budget issues or this or that.
Yeah.
I've had more cancellations, and then at the same time on my first trip over, I did a show, and then I just got stiffed on the pay. I was like, oh, you need to get paid. The guy that was supposed to pay me is in the ring. I was like, cool, I'll message him. He'll just PayPal me. Ghosted me.
Yeah. I've in a situation like that at the moment.
Funny enough, the guy that was at the show today, but I'm not going to tell you on the air.
Who?
I'm not going to fucking tell you on the air.
Well, how many promoters were there? Okay.
Just one, bro.
As in like how many people that run shows were at the show today?
Exactly, that's the question.
I will do some investigating on that. So you mentioned you know Tony, you mentioned Rhea. What's it like seeing those girls getting the recognition in the Mae Young tournament?
I like tear on my eye when Rhea was there and everything else. I'm so happy she's there. Tony also works hard. Like, she doesn't need the WWE. The WWE need her.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, she works hard, and she has her own brand, and she has her own look and her unique punk image. But at the same time, let's not go past people like Johnny Idol from Mexico, that's currently full-time in CMLL, Dingo Warrior, which wrestles full-time in Japan, Jag Hartley Jackson, full-time in Japan, my best mate, Australian Silverside, full-time in Mexico as well.
That's
been doing it for 4 years for AAA as well. So there's people like that. that do it outside of America and outside of England.
I guess I don't really watch a lot of anything that isn't WWE.
Yep.
So I guess I only kind of get that as my as what I've seen. But it is really cool to kind of see the diversity. It's not just big jacked American guys facing big jacked American guys. We get in the shorter guys, we get in the taller guys, we get in people from all kind of walks of life, and I think it's really cool to see. Quick kind of last thing, if you were to kind of say
last thing, how long is this, mate?
People to watch from Australia, so people you think that could be making waves in the Fed, anyone that you would want to kind of put the Josh Shooter stamp on and kind of say, watch out for this guy, he's going to be there, and he's going to be making
I'll get heated if I don't mention certain people, but
I'm not going to judge you. They're not here right now.
They'll listen to it. So all round and amazing babyface is Dowie James. Charismatic and great facials and very smooth with his transition. Adam Brooks, the greatest technical wrestler as well, is Damian Slater, biggest and greatest heavyweight. Jonah Rock. Adam Brooks, Crackerjack for greatest character.
Yeah.
Greatest striker would have to be Mike Burr. He'd be up there. And he's been a veteran for the last 15 years. I'm trying to think who else is there. Slicks is an older wrestler that's come back recently. That's just had a killer match with Okada. Apparently, I'm trying to look into who else there is in Australia right now. Sid Parker. He came over here and he trained with the Knights for a bit. People would know him. He's a Jurassic Punk. There is no other character out there similar to him.
Nice.
Recently, last MCW, sounds like a death or an early ECW match. He stood on the top of the turnbuckle and he jumped and dove out into the crowd where someone was hung over the barricade. Gave him a drop kick, smashed down as well at the same time. But he's insane. He's wrestled Rob Van Dam in the last few months, but he's on another level and he's just unrecognizable. JXT is great with his branding and he's very Roman Reigns in his sense at times.
Okay.
Kellyanne is probably the greatest wrestler to come out of Australia. Kellyanne Fiend Club, she's very... I can't even describe her. She has an aura, she has a sense, she has a persona. Of course, they're mostly Melbourne-based because that's who I'm mostly associated with, but they're those guys.
So there's a lot of people coming up. I'll keep my eyes out either way.
Yep.
Social media. So I know you're kind of changing things. I probably shouldn't have called you Shooter at the moment, but social media. Where are you? Where can you be found on the tinterwebs and all that sort of stuff?
For the next 6 months until the transition clearly happens over, you can just punch in Josh Shooter or Joey Axel, spelled Mr. J, Mr. O, Mr. E, Mr. Y _AXL_ on the Twitter machine. Otherwise, you go to your Bookface and you can punch in Joey Axel or Good Wrestling in Australia. I usually pop up with a funky haircut at some point. I'm found on Instagram.
I haven't even asked you about your hair, man. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Jeez. Josh, Matt, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to finally sit down with you.
Beautiful. All the very best for your future endeavours, and I'll see you on the flip side.
Cheers, man.
Figure 4 Radio.
There we have it, folks. Josh Shooter. Absolute pleasure to have the Axe on the podcast. I tend to do this thing when I'm around people with different accents than my own. I tend to start picking it up, and I am so relieved I did not break into my second-rate Aussie man accent while I was halfway through, because that's something I was definitely at risk of doing. But yeah, absolutely awesome to have Josh on. And so I remember back in the old TAW days, dare we mention their name. It must have been like my third or fourth show, and I'm kind of hanging around and people are telling me the card. I'm like, oh yeah, this guy's from Australia, and it absolutely blew my mind that I was sitting in the Woughton Centre in Milton Keynes, and this guy from Australia is coming in and taking on this dude that drives a delivery van for a living. Absolutely blew my mind, and it is really cool to kind of see Josh come back over a few years later when I've grown and developed as a commentator, and I've kind of been around more and seen more. So it's an absolute pleasure to have him on. Finally, we had a good chat. And really good to hear about the history of Australian wrestling. Turns out he's an absolute fountain of knowledge. So anybody, if you have a chance to sit down and pick the brains of Josh, I would fully recommend it, because that guy is a fucking fountain of knowledge, without a doubt. If you don't already, go to Figure 4 Radio on Facebook, give us a like, give us a comment, let us know what you think of the podcast, if there's anything you want to see here, any features you want. What is your favourite featurette? get in touch. Say it's a social media. It's make it social. Be in touch. We're also on Instagram at Figure4 Radio, on Twitter at Figure4 Radio. You can follow me, the Mastermind Ollie Spring, at F4R_Mastermind. We have the website figure4radio.weebly.com. And what else do we have? Yeah, I mean, if you're on iTunes, if you're on Stitcher, if you're on Podomatic, if you don't already do the subscribing and the following and the sharing and the rating, the reviewing, all that sort of nonsense, feel free to give us a thumbs up, because we really do appreciate it. I'm absolutely wiped out. It was Survivor Series last night. I'm half asleep, so this is probably the worst sign-off I've ever done. Next week, we've got a really fun little podcast featuring Team Mad and the Bromantics of Sacrifice Pro. So do tune in next Monday to check that out. And last but not least, if you are a wrestling promoter, or if you're a wrestler and you want commentary added to your matches or to your shows, do get in touch. At the moment, if you're listening to this on release week, on Saturday the 25th of November, it's DOA over in Cambridge. Following a weekend, which will be the 2nd of December, DOA back in Great Yarmouth. Then we have an SOS show in Harwich, December the 17th. SOS is basically the NXT to the Wrestling League. So their school where they train their guys up, and generally some of the best wrestlers, the best new wrestlers I've kind of seen and discovered this past year have all come out of SOS. So very, very worth checking that show out. Flash forward to the 23rd of December, DOA in Ipswich, and then Saki P, Sacrifice Pro in Leighton Buzzard, December the 30th, seeing the year out with a bang. Into the following year, got Wrestling League in Ipswich on the 27th of January, and let's even have a look at February. We've got Sacrifice Pro on February the 4th, DOA on February the 10th, Wrestling League February 18th, and then DOA February the 24th. Lots of things happening, all these promotions. DOA just announced being part of Fight TV in 2018. Absolutely massive news for those guys. Definitely making big steps forward next year. And say do go and check out the likes of Sacrifice Pro Wrestling, Hope Wrestling, Wrestling League, DOA, all these people we work with. It is an absolute honour, because in fact, I was saying this just yesterday in the car ride home. It's so nice to work for all these companies, and I don't have to BS my way through the commentary. I'm genuinely excited to be part of every single one of these promotions. They're all doing amazing things. So yeah, they're definitely worth your time and your energy. So do check them out. But as I said, we'll be back next week with the Bromantics, with Team Mad on Figure4 Radio. Until then, have a good week.